Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe, but there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful March the 17th, 2020. Brown Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, we're all sitting around watching the dollars roll in the NFL as all the free agents are moving teams and signing these huge, big contracts.
Yeah, it's all fair in love and war, but still Tony Romo's making a lot of money, maybe more than a lot of the quarterbacks nowadays, Big C. Everybody loves having that money rolling, and it's all fair in love and war. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Big C Sports is powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic from 3,000 miles away, and he'll do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. Want to make sure we do our due diligence in giving out that Veterans Crisis Hotline. They have people who are really experienced at helping veterans and their loved ones. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Well, Charlton, thinking about the veterans is always important in this country. And as we think about this pandemic we're going through, think about who's going to be forgotten about. It's going to be the veterans that are forgotten about. And they live in a suicide crisis every day in America, Charlton. Some 19 a day are losing their lives to suicide. And then as you think about that, many of them are homeless. Think about how many of them are in harm's way of this pandemic that we're having here in America. So we have the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number that's there for veterans to reach out to, but they also need access to be able to reach out to the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number. So as we deal with this pandemic as a nation, don't forget to deal with those veterans out there every day that are suffering and struggling in homeless and destitute situations.
And I love going out that number, 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. And they have people who are expert at helping people, veterans and their families. Really love giving that out. I wish more people would do that as well. Also want to make sure that launching a real estate TV show in the spring of 2020 already underway in some markets. The goal is simple: recruit 100 real estate brokers, putting their property listings on TV, just like McDonald's is on television, just like car dealerships in the car you're driving right now. It's on television. Sporting events, even though many have been canceled, when it's back in action and when they are tipping off and kicking balls around, that will also be on TV. Do the same thing for your real estate listing. You get that with the Big C team. You know, I also just want to make sure that there's something about history, Big C. Every book that we've ever read, somebody wrote that book. And hopefully that book was written with some truth to it, so that even 100 years after that book was written, people can pick it up and read it, and the truth still holds true. I know that we have 50 states now are affected by coronavirus. I know there's some people, they don't even know it's out there. They still want to know, did Tom Brady sign? Who cares about Tom Brady? There's a lot of people who are affected by things, but we'll cover everything. I want to make sure, because we talked about it yesterday, and the reason I say this, because there's a lot of sponsors that sponsor a lot of programming. And just like a book that's written 100 years ago, you want to know that the people carrying your sponsorship are accurate and that they're true. There are a lot of things we discussed in the past week, Big C, that are happening now. The White House is talking about, in fact, I guess they're in the midst of passing it now, a $1 trillion fund to help put people back to work and pay people. And we were just talking about that yesterday, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it's not about putting people back to work. How can you put people back to work when you have cities that are closed down in municipalities? It's about adding a stimulus. We talked about putting the money in the hands of the consumer, not the businesses, because the consumer will in turn put it back into the businesses,
economy,
Charlton, when they're allowed to spend it. But they also have to pay their rent and mortgages, and that's what that money will be utilized for when they're put out of work. But they're always going to be putting money back into the businesses, Charlton, because they have to spend the money.
Yeah, and so that's all important. I also want to mention a guy that I like. I know we have primaries going on in different parts of the country, I believe some 5 states, and I want to commend, it was Andrew Yang that actually had talked about something that many people have talked about before. It's not necessarily a reparation, but Andrew Yang, when he was running to become a nominee, he mentioned giving every American $1,000 because that would give them money in their hands to go buy goods and services, put food on the table for their families, maybe keep the mortgage or their rent paid. And some people scoff. They say, "Oh, that's socialism. That won't happen." I think he's prescient, and I just believe that as really one of the last men of color running for the Democratic nominee for the Oval Office, I think he was a very prescient man, and it's amazing how they're even POTUS is listening to him, Big C, as they're talking about putting money into the hands of the consumers, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it's coming to fruition. He's listening to him as well as he's listening to Governor Cuomo of New York. The stopping point in all this is Mitch McConnell, the leader of the Senate, Charlton. He is refusing to pass any of these bills that have been passed by the House. I mean, the American public is desperately in need of this money, but Mitch McConnell is refusing to give up the money because it's hurting all of his lobbyists, Charlton, all the big pharmaceutical companies and drug companies and gun companies that he represents and energy companies.
Yeah, I know Mitch McConnell. I think he wanted to make President Obama a one-term president. It's amazing how people still listen to him. But I do want to give some credit where credit's due. And what I also want to say, not just to you, Big C, but for anybody listening, everybody has an opinion, but opinions, they should be footnoted by fact. And now that's what history books are for. You got to have a footnote. But also, I would just want to make sure that we're not, as a broadcast company, just a shut up and dribble type of broadcast companies, as a lot of people are. Maybe that's their capacity. But Steve Mnuchin, the 77th United States Secretary of the Treasury and the federal government, proposing that $1 trillion stimulus package with the first wave of $250 billion to help Americans. I think, Big C, that we may be the only sports show in the universe that talked about that more so than where did Tom Brady sign, or who cares where he signed. But that $250 billion is the first wave of the $1 trillion that's actually going to keep people in their homes, keep some food on the table, and I think that's so important. And I want Big C Sports to be on the side of right, because we've been talking about that for more than just today. It's been the last week or so. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the biggest problem we have, Charlton, is that the government has dragged its foot all throughout this. You can talk about all the bailout packages that the government has proposed. These packages should have been proposed a month ago.
Yeah.
And I know they always say better late than never, but look at how much is lost when you're late. That is the biggest problem, and how much is it going to take to recover from it?
Yeah, that's all true. And I just love being a part of that conversation. I love that I've read enough, and I know you read a lot too, and I want to be a part of that solution. So as we look back and say, you know what, we got through that, just like we got through a lot of other pandemics in the past, I want to make sure that we're on the right side of history and not just ogling over who bounced a football or basketball or baseball, etc. Even that's part of life too. And I just want to mention, one more thing that I think is important. I was out today just getting some supplies, and of course a lot of stores are out of supplies, but I ran across an old friend of mine, and she actually used to film when I would cover MMA fighting in Northern California. She was actually the photographer and she's actually a school teacher, but then she has a photography business on the side. Well, she's getting paid by her school district, but she can't go to work, so she can't help a lot of those kids. And also, she's lost a lot of clients too because people don't want to have, photography done. There's a lot of sports that aren't being played right now. So I just told her, like she and I talked for a few minutes, you meet real people that we will get over this, but there are real people that are affected by it. And it was nice just to run across somebody that we both gave each other some encouragement. And that means that we know that is real. And it's nice when you run across people who have actually been impacted by it. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, every America realistically has been impacted by it. When you talk about cities closing down, the Bay Area, 7 million people, New York, 8 million people closing down as well with other municipalities around the country. Real people are affected by it. I've been affected by it, Charlton. I had my doctor telling me that I could not be seen. But think about that. When you need to go to a doctor and they will not allow you to come into their facilities. This is the problem with America. We can all talk about self-preservation and things to do as preventive measures.
Yeah.
And these are what the doctors are taking, preventive measures. So unless you're grossly ill, Charlton, you cannot see a medical professional. That's reality.
Yeah.
I mean, we can sit up and listen to all the press conferences that's going on every day. But until you're touched by this pandemic, Charlton, you really don't understand the magnitude of it. I was touched by it today when I needed to see my doctor. I called him. The office called me back. He called me personally and said he could not see me because they've been closed down.
Yeah.
Think about that. As American citizens, as we're dealing with a health crisis nationwide, and they're talking about do things to keep yourself safe, and talk to your doctor, talk to your medical professionals, and you don't have access to them. So how does that make you feel as an American?
Yeah, that's very true. It's real for a lot of people. At least we do have the health insurance when we are able to.
Think about this, Charlton. Health insurance, and not trying to make it short on you. I have health insurance.
Yeah.
I go to the best medical facility in this state, the best medical company in this state, and my doctor called me personally. He knows I have health insurance. Everybody in his office knows I have health insurance.
Yeah.
I've been there dozens and dozens of times. They tell me I cannot be seen. I have a medical issue.
Yeah.
And they tell me they cannot see me for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Because they're closing up. And so everybody that's in my position, unless you're going to an emergency room around America, we can listen to press conferences and economic relief all day long.
Yeah.
But we're right now in a medical pandemic, and you cannot see medical professionals.
Well, that's a good and bad thing. If it's critical, they'll get you in. So we have at least that bright side. I wanted to mention something that's not such a bright side, because I ran across people also that have issues where they can't even get out of the house right now for medical reasons. But I want to mention that there's always a bright side to something. Volunteers in Seattle, Big C, I think that's the second hardest hit state in the United States, in Seattle, Washington. They get the first dosage of a COVID-19 trial vaccine. Now, I don't know how long it's going to take, but at least the scientists are starting to solve that problem. I know that's important, and to me, that's hope for a lot of people. But I agree with you. There's a lot of times we can't get in to see the doctor unless it's in medical emergency. So I guess we could take some solace on that. Yeah. Yeah.
And I could not get in. I have a medical emergency.
Yeah.
And my doctor would not see me.
Yeah.
Think about that. Think about how that. I feel like a lot of Americans. Like I said, I've listened to press conferences till the cows come home.
Yeah.
But as everybody is talking and nobody's giving a solution, I had to deal with reality today.
Yeah.
To talk to my doctor that I've known for years and said, I cannot see you. And he said, I don't even know if they'll let you come into an emergency room.
Yeah.
Unless you're on your deathbed.
Yeah.
This is how they're dealing with it. We've heard everything on the news. But try calling your doctor, just like any American listening to me. Try calling your doctor and see if you can get in. I've had 3 different medical appointments canceled in the last week, dentist and doctor.
Yeah.
And so if you cannot get in to be seen, and an emergency room will not take you unless an ambulance brings you in, Charles.
Yeah. Well, if you need an ambulance, fall down, call 911, and maybe that would help. But there's a lot of people, Big C,
think about it. If you put in a false claim on that ambulance, they can charge you for that.
Well, it's better. If you got to go to the doctor, it's better than waiting. That's just my opinion. People could do what they got to do. But I do know there are people who they don't even have insurance to have the doctor say no to. So it can at least take some solace in that. I just hope that people can stay safe with that. One more thing I want to bring up, because I know you talk about Andrew Cuomo quite a bit, and I love watching he and his brother on. They had a piece last night on CNN, and they were talking about what might be coming sooner than later, where the National Guard can come in and actually help out with some of the empty schools, and they can construct hospital beds for people that are in chronic conditions. That means, we may want to go to the doctor. They say, hey, we can't see you. That's different than someone being comatose or having a stroke or heart attack and can't get in. So there's different degrees of who needs to be seen urgently, so we can all take a solace in that. But I think Cuomo was very prescient also when he said we need to get ahead of that curve like a tsunami that you cannot see. And I think that's starting to happen. I think all states now, Big C, are talking about that being more of a reality before the end of this month. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, he's been the leader. The governor of New York has been the leader because the president is listening to the press conferences that he's holding every morning and then following up with excerpts and plagiarism from what the governor is utilizing, Charlton.
Yeah.
This has been long known by the federal government. If you think less than a month ago that President Trump said this wasn't serious.
Yeah.
It'll go away. Don't worry about it. This is what he said. So how can you take him serious now as far as being leadership and consoler, Charlton, about this pandemic that's going on in America when you don't have insight or empathy about the American public as it's going on? The thing that kills me about the president is every damn day he wants to talk about the stock market, market. If people don't exist, what does the stock market matter, Charlton? When people are losing their lives, what does the stock market matter? When you don't have money to spend, what does the stock market matter, Charlton, when you cannot go to work and don't have a job or even buy groceries for your kids?
Yeah. You know how we talked about earlier when we opened the show, Big C, that history will give everybody a grade if they were accurate or not? I don't know anyone that reads that respects POTUS and what he says. There was a book when I was a young boy, I was told about it, and it was about a little boy, the boy who cried wolf. I think you can equate that to the man who cried wolf. You can only lie to smart people so long. Dumb people, you lie to them all the time because they don't read. But for a lot of smart people, history will judge everybody, even us. That's why when I say anything, I want to give a footnote. And as I mentioned many times, and again, it's just my opinion, and everybody has one. I'd rather listen to Dr. Fauci because he's dealt with these pandemics under 6 different administrations, and he's one of the foremost scientists when it comes to dealing with pandemics. I'd rather trust what comes out of him. And also the the Surgeon General, Jerome Adams. I don't listen to POTUS or Mike Pence. And anybody that does that, they can do that at their own peril. Listen to the scientists.
But those are the two that hold the press conference. I love what Dr. Fauci says, but he's not the point person or the person holding the press conference, so he's limited in what he can say. He's going to talk from a medical perspective.
Yeah.
But he's not the one that's going to be able to cure the problem of dealing with society in America, Charlton. What he says is great, and the intelligence will allow you to listen to the things that he says.
Yeah.
But he's also muzzled about what he can tell you. He's not going to sit there and give you 100% of what can occur in this country. He gives you a highlight because the president and the administration has limited his talking points.
Yeah, that's why I like to read about him and Google it. There's other pandemics that he's been a part of before Trump was even in office. But I want to mention this part too. I know we do some sports. And one of the things I appreciate about you when we do our show, and one of the reasons I call you the Mystic, Big C, is if you ever met some people and they're sports savvy, they can talk about sports all day. I know I've met women over the years, and they date these guys that are just like sports jocks. That's all they know, who won a game and how big, strong, and fast somebody is. And you can hear a lot of that on TV programs today. Not even a pandemic can get the dumb guys off the air. They're still loaded up with who won a game, and that's okay too. But history's going to judge them. We're either part of a solution or part of a problem. We can be both. We'll talk to sports too. But I know some guys and women, they don't get their news. They don't even know we have a pandemic. I was just talking to someone today that said, I hate watching the news. It's too negative. But if you don't watch it or read about it, how do you get your information? It can't just be ontological, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, they do watch parts of it, Charlton, but and as they say, it can become depressing if that's what you listen to all day.
Yeah.
It's like sitting there watching someone get beat up in a fight all day long and you're waiting on the referee to stop the fight.
Yeah.
That's what the news cycle is like right now. We're getting the same story every day. They've told you what to do to deal with taking care of yourself and your family, and they tell you that every day. And intelligence will make you understand the first or second time that they tell you that this is serious. I knew from day one that it was serious, and I knew that it hit home today when my doctor told me, no, you cannot be seen. Even though you have this serious problem, you cannot be seen.
Yeah.
And so I understand what the cycle is about, but you also got to have some outlet in life. One of the problems about when we have a lack of sports in America is that domestic violence goes up, and that is a serious statistic that they have numbers on. And this is one of the things you do not want to occur, is domestic violence to go up. So those people need an outlet also, Charlton, to curb some of that stimulation that they have in their lives. And so if they can get an outlet from watching replays or listen to whatever sports story that they can, it helps society.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone knows the pandemic is here.
Yeah.
Everyone has heard how to solve the pandemic. But you can't stop living. It's like you said, you went to a store to get some supplies. You went to the store to get some supplies. You didn't go to the store because of the pandemic. You needed the supplies, Charlton, and we need those every day in American society. So people have to still live their lives.
Yeah.
They have to keep moving on, because you just can't crawl into a corner and say, I'm going to give up because it's an epidemic going on outside.
Yeah, and everybody knows that that's part of the solution too. I still want to make sure that we do touch on companies, that are doing a good thing in helping whatever's going on in their workforce. CBS Sports, Turner Broadcasting, they're actually going to pay utility workers and freelance workers that would miss part of the March Madness some of the money they would have gotten. Not every company is doing that. I think all companies should do that. I remember when I got started in this business, it was through freelance labor. It was with ABC Sports. Actually, it was Fox Sports, and then it went into ABC Sports and NBC Sports and then CBS Sports. So that's a good gesture, Big C. It covers anyone contracted to work in the NCAA tournament, the Final Four, in the Division II and Division III national championship games. That's a start, but that's taking the high road and doing the right thing. CBS Sports, Turner Sports, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that's only covering a 2.5, 3 week span, Charlton, when you realistically look at it. And those people weren't working every day. Those games were played every 3 to 4 days. When you look at it, think about the baseball players, Charlton, as the baseball season is not being played. Think about the people who were contracted and relying on that, the vendors who would work in arenas and stadiums. Think about the freelance writers and reporters, and also radio broadcast people who worked in those venues that are not being paid. I mean, it's a great gesture by the NCAA, but look at the multitude of sports that are not being paid right now. We haven't heard any talk from the NBA that they're paying people, Charlton, that would be making an income off of working those games that have not been played. The NHL, no one has talked about them being paid. So, I mean, it's a great gesture, like you said, by CBS Sports. You have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
But when you look overall at the number of sports that are not being played, professional soccer, what's going to happen to those employees who are potentially not going to be paid?
Yeah, that's very true. I want to just mention something that something about athletes that oftentimes, we talk about athletes and what they do. Steph Curry, the NBA, I guess I won't call him a legend. He's definitely the only unanimous, NBA player that's ever gotten an MVP award, but he's given over $1 million of his own money to help a lot of the causes of kids. And I don't know if it's just the Oakland area, but when you do that, that's pretty phenomenal. And it happen to be African-American men, that doesn't matter at all. But the fact that it does matter, because sometimes if we don't highlight that, then a lot of people don't know that. So I congratulate Steph Curry and his wife for doing that. There's a lot of athletes that do a lot for a lot of people, Big C, not always known in the public. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, he's just one of dozens of athletes, Charlton, who've gone out there and donated money. Karl Anthony Towns did it also, as well as a wealth of other NBA players, Major League Baseball players, and some hockey players, Charlton, have gone out and dedicated money out of their own pocket, as well as leagues and league owners have gone out and put forth this money to help people out in need. So it's a great gesture from the world of professional sports, Charlton, that many athletes, team owners, and teams have gotten on this bandwagon to help out the communities.
Yeah, and so we know that as politicians do their things, like Mitch McConnell, what a joke he is as a human being, but he has a position because somehow he got in there. Kevin Durant, I know as sports unites people, and we've heard the actor, I think it was Tom Hanks, he and his wife about a week ago, there's this Idris Elba who was going to be the first African-American James Bond, and he was announced that he had that virus, and there was 4 players. Originally there were 2, but then it came out 4 players of the NBA's New Jersey Nets, Kevin Durant being the most prominent one that tested positive for the coronavirus. It's not a death sentence. It's just something that you have to have the incubation period. And for people who have it, there's really no antidote for it yet other than rest and what they call self-quarantine. But let me get your thoughts on something. It's just my opinion, because we're going to talk about it too in the second half. When most of the sports world pays so much attention to where Tom Brady is going to sign a football contract. I know he's done football, but history will judge people based on the times, the economic times, and the political times they're going through. I think Kevin Durant's story, more so than anybody else in today's news, as a sports athlete, is more prevalent and top of the mind because he's dealing with a serious issue. Who cares about Tom Brady where he signs? That's my opinion. Do you equate the two the same, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I'm wondering why would Kevin Durant get more consideration than any other professional athlete? You got to realize Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell, it was announced last week. Why would Kevin Durant be more prevalent than him? Those 2 players, Charlton, he's one of 4 teammates with the Nets. I mean, he's just a name. People take his name and use that from a manipulative perspective, Charlton, and say, hey, if Kevin Durant, he's a human being.
Yeah.
He's a guy who makes millions of dollars playing basketball. But he's not the spokesperson nor the face of this pandemic that's going on in America. He just happens to be a high-profile professional athlete. He's not going to scathe anybody away from this disease. He's not going to change anybody's lifestyle.
Yeah.
Who knows where Kevin Durant was or what he was doing? He's not even playing this year.
Right.
But he's just a namesake, Charles. To think about the many other Americans that have to suffer and don't have the financial wherewithal and medical wherewithal of a Kevin Durant.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about the idea. Remember when Bloomberg was running he was trying to become the Democratic nominee. I think he spent $500 million to try to become the Democratic nominee, and it didn't work. Now, of course, people do what they want to do with their own money, but there's so much of an emphasis of pumping money into a campaign. It would be wonderful, and I know you were talking about Cuomo, New York Governor Cuomo, how they need money to help construct more beds, and maybe they are going to call in the National Guard in all 50 states. That may happen by the end of this month, and that'd be great. But I think it's just when you have things that are guided in the right direction, I do applaud, Mr. Cuomo for what he's doing. But when I look at our political system also, it's incredible how so much money is spent on being elected, and maybe it being his state is the most hardest hit. I wonder if he even has any type of second thought about maybe that $500 million could have done more to construct some hospital beds. Just my opinion. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you have to understand that the hospital industry is a private industry, Charlton. They don't construct hospital beds. Construct an extra 10,000 hospital beds and build a wing in a particular city to say, okay, we're going to sit here hoping that a pandemic comes within the next 8 to 10 years. What Governor Cuomo is talking about is the Army Corps of Engineers. The Army Corps of Engineers are who build hospitals. They build bridges. They build highways. They build infrastructure in America. And they are prepared to go out and handle this better than any private company in America, the Army Corps of Engineers.
Yeah.
This is what they're constructed to do. They build the field hospitals in war environments, Charlton. They go there and set those up that is safe military operations and medical operations for our military personnel.
Yeah.
So the Army Corps of Engineers is what he's been calling on, and the president is not aware what the Army Corps of Engineers does, Charlton. So when we have the access and the ability as a company, as a country, to do these things, we can't sit there and call on the private sector. This is what our military is for. Not to go down and build a wall in Mexico, but to set up vacant facilities, Charlton, in emergency situations. This is the Army Corps of Engineers who went in during Katrina to set up down there, Charlton, and help out those people during that plight. And every other natural disaster that's been in America, when you need emergency housing situations, the Army Corps of Engineers comes in. And this is what we need. And the president can hold a press conference every day.
Yeah.
Every day that he holds a press conference, that means that the Army Corps of Engineers is not working.
Yeah, and I agree. As I said, history will judge all of us, no matter who we are, no matter what political title we have. We're going to take the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about some of the things that are going on in sports. Also, any update that I get while we're doing our show, I want to mention that too. What we can all do to keep ourselves safe. We'll make the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on the apps that I love called Google or Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear, welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic from 3,000 miles away, and he'll do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Really appreciate that. Also launching a real estate listing channel already underway in some markets in spring of 2020. The goal is simple: to get 100 real estate brokers to list their properties on TV, just like McDonald's, just like car dealerships, and just like sports companies that are doing that. You can do the same thing with real estate. So I'm glad that we're able to do the part that history will judge people. If you're going through a pandemic, do you ignore it or do you mention it? I want to do my part to keep people safe. Also, in the world of sports, how much did the NFL players leave on the table with the new CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, Big C? Not that it matters as much as some things, but it still matters, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, they left a wealth on the table when you think about the new collective bargaining agreement. You think about, this is really no different from the last one. When players are drafted, NFL teams own them for the first 4 years of their contract, Charlton, if they stay on the team.
Yeah.
They can exercise a fifth-year option on some contracts if you are a first-round draft pick. But if you're not, Charlton, they can franchise you on a fifth year. They can actually franchise you on that sixth year. So there's no long-term guarantee as far as contracts getting big money in the NFL. We saw that with Dak Prescott, where they owned him for 4 years in Dallas, did not have to renegotiate a deal, and the Dallas Cowboys didn't freely do that.
Yeah.
They exercised a franchise tag on him this year, Charlton, and now if they don't sign into a long-term contract, they can hit him with a 6-year under that franchise tag, Charlton, and he can belong to the Dallas Cowboys for 6 years and don't make $60 million.
Yeah, that's true too, and it's all good. I wanna ask you this thought, because you talk about how prescient some commissioners are. I think baseball has a very good, commissioner in Manfred, because they have this huge salary. It's all Kurt Flood based anyway.
Well, that's not the commissioner. That's the Players Association. They have the best Players Association in all of professional sports. They have fought for the players. They set things up in the players' behalf. The commissioner just goes along for the ride.
Right, but he did push back the start of the sport, and everybody has. So everybody gets kudos for that. And I guess, again, Adam Silver pushing back the start of NBA, even though I said it was black men that said, I'm not going to play. So what else could he do? Get some scrubs in and do that? So I just want to make that known. The new CBA, it did give players, I guess, in the reduction of Commissioner Roger Goodell's power in personal conduct issues, it raised their minimum salaries, preseason game reduction, increasing roster size, and practice squad salary increases as well. Let me get your thoughts on something. When you think about playing a sport, does having more players on the roster that are not going to play, does that help at all? Or could some of that money then aim at increasing long-term medical care? Does that make any sense, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, that's something that the players left on. I mean, it's not about the league, Jonathan. It's about the players. They voted for that.
Yeah. They
voted for the money. And I've always said this about pro football players, even when I was playing. All the players, you get more to want the money right now instead of money down the road, because they're living above their means.
Yeah.
Many of the players, Jonathan, 20% of the players on the team get 80% of the income.
Yeah.
So when you get the lower income of players saying, I want my money now, I'm not worried about health insurance. They don't think about that, just like they don't think about the nightclub being closed when practice is over, that they can go out and hang out all night long.
Yeah.
So when I look at, this is the reason why you had such a divide when it came down to the vote. Because those players who make all the money, people saying, well, hey, they have a lot to lose, which they did.
Yeah.
Because they're fighting for long-term health. They're fighting for long-term benefits. Where the younger players, Charlton, who are not making the money, they're like, if I get another $100,000 on my salary and I'm only making $600,000 this year, that's a huge increase for me. I can't turn down the $100,000. I'm not in the financial situation of the player who's on my team who's making $2.1 million per game, and I'm only making $600,000 for the entire season.
Yeah, I mean, that's always something, I guess, as you're more present or you spend more time around people who have been away from the game for a long period of time, and you see a lot of guys have a hard time even walking, especially when you see the induction of the Hall of Fames. What I really remember is watching how the NFL will have the game in Ohio where the players will walk onto the field and they'll announce the former players. And a lot of guys just have a hard time walking. They should have had some of those men at the bargaining table with the nouveau riche athletes to let them know, hey, this is what you'll be facing in a few more years. Why don't they involve the retired players more in these bargaining agreements? Big C, your thoughts?
Because the current president of the NFLPA does not work for the retired players, Charlton. He works for the current players that are in the league. And they'll all tell you that. Demarius Smith will tell you that. Gene Upshaw said it when he was the NFLPA president, Charlton.
Yeah.
They do not work for the retired players because the retired players do not pay them. So they have no voice at the table.
Yeah, and that's a shame when you don't have the wisdom of your elders. We all could use more of that. With free agency in full bloom and quarterbacks on the move, the great Drew Brees, he resigned with the New Orleans Saints for 2 years. Also did a lot in that community when Hurricane Katrina hit. So he's more, in my eyes, Drew Brees will always be more than just an athlete. But he signed for 2 more years. Ryan Tannehill, he resigned with the Tennessee Titans for 3 years. The Panthers, Carolina Panthers, I'm glad to see that Teddy Bridgewater, who never lost a game this season when he started with the New Orleans Saints, and it looks like he is going to be on with the Carolina Panthers now. The great Cam Newton most likely will have to find a different place to lay his head. And then the Colts are signing Phillip Rivers. I don't know why. But what's up for the next big names that are out there in your opinion, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, the next big names that are out there, Marcus Mariota also signed with the Oakland Raiders. So what's up between he and Derek Carr is going to be a unique situation with the Las Vegas Raiders out there, Charlton. But as everybody talked about Tom Brady and where Tom Brady is going to go, everyone is saying, well, Tom Brady is going to Tampa or Tom Brady is going to the Los Angeles Chargers. My inkling that Tom Brady is going to throw everybody a curveball and end up with the New York Giants, the only team that he's lost twice in the Super Bowl with. They have a wealth of offensive weapons, Charlton. They also just hired a brand-new coach who is the receivers coach in New England, who is now the head coach, Joe Johnson, of the New York Giants. And so he and Tom Brady have a standing relationship, and the offensive terminology would be the same between the head coach and the quarterback. And they have key offensive weapons. They have a nice receiving core. They have Saquon Barkley in the backfield, one of the top young running backs in the NFL, Charlton. And also Nate Solder, the left offensive tackle for the New York Giants, was there for a 10-year run with the New England Patriots. So there's a lot of familiarity in New York. And you think about his wife's background. She's in modeling. And Tom Brady has a lot of business interests in New York. And this is just like LeBron James when he left Cleveland. This was about business. This is the same thing with Tom Brady. It's about business. And you think about if he goes to that division, who's in that division? The Philadelphia Eagles, Dallas Cowboys, Washington Redskins. None of those teams were really strong last year, Charlton. They had to struggle to make the playoffs.
500 made the playoffs for the NFC East. And also the great Bill Belichick. He played, he was an employee of the Mara family, also got the 2 Super Bowls when he was there as an assistant on the defensive side with the great Bill Parcells. So that might be something that we'll see if that happens. Let me just run back across the country real quick, down to Las Vegas. want to get your signs or your thoughts. Marcus Mariota, he played at Oregon University, played in the college football playoffs. They lost to Ohio State in the national championship game. We know he's been an up-and-down quarterback. Now, he's been an up-and-down quarterback for the Tennessee Titans, beaten out by a guy in Tannehill that many people thought that Mariota was a better quarterback, but couldn't quite stay healthy. And then you look at Derek Carr, played at Fresno State, also played for the Oakland Raiders, now the Las Vegas Raiders. We know he took the Raiders to the playoffs the only time in the last 13 years, and then he broke a leg. So he's been an up-and-down quarterback. What is it? I mean, only Gruden can answer this. What do they see in Mariota, who got beat out on his own team, that he was drafted to be the leading quarterback? How's he going to compete with Derek Carr? They both have been up and down, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's not always the right fit in every situation for a quarterback. When you look at quarterbacks, leave a lot of situations that they're in originally, and they go elsewhere and prosper. This is the same thing that, Gruden is hoping for with Mariota, that he can bring in a younger quarterback than Carr, Charlton, somebody who was thought of to be the second-best quarterback in the draft that he came out in when he was drafted behind Jameis Winston.
Yeah.
And put him in a system, as you see the NFL is moving more towards mobility.
Yeah.
Maybe Gruden can get all this out of
Mariota.
Yeah. Talk about him being a quarterback whisperer. Everyone has constantly talked about Carr's days with the Raiders being over.
Yeah.
And with the new general manager and the new head coach in the past couple of years, they constantly talked about looking for another quarterback. I think Derek Carr will not be a Raider once the season starts.
Yeah, and that, to me, he might fit better with the L.A. Chargers, my opinion. But I want to ask you, which one do you like more? You've seen both styles. I think Carr, obviously more the drop-back passer, not the one to run the ball as much as Mariota can run the football. Which one do you like going forward? It seems that the league is moving toward guys with the talent of Marcus Mariota, but do you see that, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, that's where he's going. That's the reason why the Raiders signed him. They're looking for a more RPO option out of a quarterback. That's the reason for bringing in Mariota. Carr is not that type of quarterback, even though he completes at a high percentage of passes, Charlton. You got to look at the weapons in Oakland, which are very minimal. And so you need a quarterback that can prolong plays.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I really like your thoughts on Brady's stand-up in the Great Northeast. I want to just touch on a little bit of what's going on with the NBA, National Basketball Players Association. They've reached an agreement to not subject players to drug testing during the hiatus caused by the coronavirus, Big C. Players typically, they undergo 6 random unannounced urine tests during the season and off-season, as stated in the collective bargaining agreement. Is that a good thing or bad thing? Don't you want to know if somebody has anything going on that you're going to pay tens of millions of dollars to? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, let the weed smoke fly. That's what's happening with the NBA players. They got to get rid of the stress somehow. And players know that, it's for decades, Charlton, that the league and players have known that players have used this for medicinal purposes. I remember when the Chiefs got caught one time with 2 pounds of marijuana in his suitcase going back to Boston. So these are things that players do, Charlton, and in many states marijuana is legal. I really appreciate the league for, relaxing the legality of that as far as testing players while they're not playing.
I think Major League Baseball also brought in the fact that it's not going to be something that they test for because they know a lot of people are dealing with issues, and sometimes if they give it to cancer patients, why not give it to guys who are just trying to eliminate the stress? So the sports shutdown, most vulnerable victims, from hot dog vendors to hourly broadcast support staff to freelance journalists that we talked about earlier, the slate of games canceled because of the coronavirus, it could really devastate the financial situation. A long hiatus could also alter the industry entirely. And I want to get your thoughts on what you think is at stake, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, we're talking about altering the industry in many ways, Charlton. What if those people are not able to come back and work those positions, Charlton, because they've been forced to go out and get full-time jobs elsewhere when they do open up once this pandemic is lessened, Charlton? Because when so many people have relied on these positions, and a lot of them have been part-time where they work this to subsidize their income throughout the year, whether they're a vendor in a stadium, whether they're a freelance broadcaster, Charlton. These sports jobs have not been their full job. They've been a subsidizing job. And without those subsidies, Charlton, coming in, how are many of those people going to make it? I know the government is talking about putting $1,000 in somebody's pocket, but when you're going out and you're making anywhere from $220 to $275 a game, Charlton, working these games,
yep,
that $1,000 goes through real quick.
Yeah, it does go through real quick. And just to piggyback on that story, there was a 40-year-old concession vendor who works at the New York Stadiums, Big C. It estimates about $20,000 yearly between the Mets and the Yankees home games alone. A 29-year-old from New York who works the arena, I guess the regional sports networks as well as the Major League Baseball network, handles the pitch cast and also the stats cast, which is unsure if she'll work again. The broadcast works for the RNs, the resident nurses, comes out to be about $220 to $270 per game, after taxes. Major League Baseball network, they only pay $23 an hour. That's above the national average, but compared to guys who are making several $1 million in a year, Big C. So that's real talk about people that are being affected by that, Big C. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at contracts on players, Charles, especially in baseball, contracts are guaranteed in baseball.
Yeah.
So they're going to get their money. When you look at the broadcast networks, they may not pay the leagues because they have, clauses in their contracts, any vendor of that nature, that if something happens outside the venue that is not in their control, Charles, they're not obligated to pay their contract. So as we look at team owners who are going to take a hit and have to pay the players and not get that broadcast revenue in, they're not going to pay any of those vendors.
I know you talked about that nuclear clause, Big C, and that's in a lot of contracts. Owners, reportedly, they're unwilling to act because a lot of them are like Mitch McConnell, Big C, if you understand what I mean. They think about the uncertainties of how long they might be on the hook, and the destiny of baseball games on the schedule is a poor excuse, of course. But I think there's a local unions, like Local 11 and the Union for Hospitality Workers in Southern California out here on the West Coast, whose ranks include about 5,600 workers in sports venues. Late last week, the union sent a letter to the owners of the LA Lakers, the LA Clippers, the Sparks, the LA Dodgers, the Angels, the Kings, the Galaxy, and the LAFC. It actually was asking them to continue paying the players, often subcontract, who work in their stadiums. I think CBS Sports is now doing that for the March Madness as well as Turner Sports. So at least it's a step in the right direction, whether it comes to fruition or not. Big C, we don't know. Your thoughts?
Well, CBS is a total different entity than the owners of those California professional clubs, Charlton. Yeah. And you would think that they would have some sensibility and reasonability about them. We had a conversation last week when we talked about the nuclear option of the NBA owners, and you said would Jeannie Buss refuse to pay LeBron James? She's refusing to pay the workers that work in the arena, Charlton. So if she refuses to pay them, she'll also refuse to pay the athletes. But this just shows the selfishness of those California team owners, Charlton. You know that these workers in these arenas rely on that income to support them and their families.
Yeah.
And these billionaire owners are saying it's not our responsibility. So think about that. You talked about 6,000 people, Charlton, that the union is asking the owners to put together, to pony up, to put together a pool of money to help these workers out. Now, we know that Steve Ballmer is one of the richest people in America that owns the Clippers.
Yeah.
And you know the wealth of the people who own the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah.
So as you look at these team owners out there in California, Charlton, and they're saying that these 5,600 workers don't matter.
Well, I think they're just telling, we were talking about, oh my God, prescience is about knowing things before they happen. We talked about what's more important, your money or your health. We just did that show last week, Big C, and I was telling you health is more important. You said, no, it's the money. Well, maybe that's coming to fruition with some owners. I do think they will capitulate and they'll do the right thing as they see more owners and players doing that.
Well, this goes back, Charlton, to how you opened up the show.
Yeah.
About reading and how history is and being honest. And this is what you're pressing right now about those owners in California.
I agree.
About history will be judgmental of them.
Yeah.
That they're right now. I mean, it's not about later on down the road. It's about
Do it now. Yeah.
They've been missing games since day one, just like the players have, Charlton.
Yeah.
So, and they don't have the backup income that the players have. A lot of these live from paycheck to paycheck to make ends meet. Now, we've seen that the season's been, put on hold for the past 2 weeks, so that's a couple weeks without a check. So they're going to go another month before they sit down and say, well, I can peel off a few $1 million to help these people out.
Well, Big C Sports will call them out. Not many of the other just shut up and dribble networks will do that. Major League Baseball and the Major League Baseball Players Association, they did donate $1 million to Feed the Hungry, and that was on Monday. Major League Baseball and MLB Players Association, they announced a joint $1 million donation that will be evenly split between Feeding America and Meals on Wheels in America. I told you Steph Curry was also involved with using his own money to do something of that nature. I think J.J. Watt down for the Houston Texans, the same thing. Ironically, they're all just copying what the great Colin Kaepernick did with his own money, even though he was ostracized for it, Big C. But not everybody sees the bright light at the same time. It is a step in the right direction, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it is a step in the right direction, and it's always great that the players and the association come together and do this. But, you know, really, the people who have the money are the owners. Those are the billionaires.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about the millionaires competing against the billionaires, just like we're looking at in society here, where the millionaires are competing against the billionaires. And it's amazing the ones with the billions are the last ones to react.
Yeah, they said, I guess they call it tightwad, but history will judge people. And again, this is not about blaming anybody. Some people are conscious and some people are not conscious. Some people have empathy for the fellow human being and some people don't. That's why you can have one person that can have 5 deferments from the military and is late to act when people need help, Big C. How will the NCAA recoup millions of dollars from lost tournament revenue, Big C? The NCAA, and I don't think a lot of people really understand, they made more than $1 billion last year, almost $867 million from the men's Division I basketball tournament, which showcases predominantly 80% of the free labor comes from free black labor. Not much has changed, but most of that comes from massive television rights deals with CBS and Turner, which ran through 2032, that tournament year, and it's actually standard for media rights, contracts to have language that relieves the rights of holders and from financial obligation if games are canceled due to events outside of control of the property. And we talked about that nuclear option that you talked about. I still believe that people do the right thing, but they don't always do the right thing at the same time. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, CBS right now, Charlton, is looking just like the owners in the NBA. We don't want to pay you for lack of productivity, Charlton, and this is something that was outside our control.
Yeah.
And it's in the language of the contracts. When the collective bargaining agreements are written, just like with the contracts with the broadcast companies are written, there's always clauses that's going to protect the stronger of the individuals.
Yeah.
And CBS has they're the stronger of the individuals because they've put forth the money. So they're going to protect their money at all costs, Charlton. So if you're not producing the product,
yep,
that they're paying you to produce, and they're going to exercise that option of not paying you. And so they're not going to pay the NCAA. So there's going to be a financial hit that the NCAA is going to have to take next year.
And think about it, too. I told you I ran into an old friend of mine, actually a school teacher. She covers a lot of the fights that I've covered in Northern California in the MMA circuit, Big C. And we talked about college kids, and probably high school, of course, too. But think about income, college funds, and the financial security is vanished. No games means no money, and that's bigger than just saying no games for right now. We don't know when they're going to come back, but that's real talk, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, that's hurt everybody across the board. I know you talk a lot and you lament about people playing replays.
Yeah.
But you need an outlet. You have to feel content. And the content says original content. Replay is actually original content when it runs through.
Yeah.
The first time it goes through. You have clauses in your contract that allows you to put in content, Charlton, that is familiar with the content you're supposed to have originally. So that's why the broadcast companies do play replays.
Yeah.
But as we talk about lost revenue across the board, Charlton, you're not getting 100% of the revenue for those replays that you would have gotten. So that's hurting everybody across the board. And when you look at these broadcast companies, they're eventually going to have to make cuts if there's no live sports. You think about the guys who are not broadcasting the game, the cameramen, the statisticians, all that support staff, the prop holders, Charlton, all of those people, the font creators. We think about the play-by-play and the analysts when we see a game on television, but you got to look at those production trucks behind the stadium.
Yeah.
All the cameramen that are in the venue, Charlton, just everybody. We're talking about a couple hundred people for every game that's going on that are not receiving revenue now.
That's very well true. South Carolina, Oregon, they give historic ending to their season despite the NCAA's tournament cancellation. The Gamecocks, they finished the season ranked number 1 by the Associated Press. South Carolina went undefeated in conference play and won the SEC championship with ease. A 32-1 record overall and 16-0 in the conference. The Oregon Ducks out of the Pac-12, they went 31-2, 17-1 in the Pac-12 conference. They were poised to meet South Carolina in the women's national championship game. And the Ducks versus the Gamecocks, which one tastes better on the plate, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, Yardbird is always good. You had your choice when it came down to that chicken or duck. But when you think about these two lady programs, Charlton, that were dominant throughout the year in college basketball, East Coast versus West Coast, we're really going to find out, is the SEC better than the Big 12 when we look at that. But this is one of those unfortunate things, Charlton. The Oregon Ducks had the greatest female basketball player in the history of college basketball on that team. Dawn Staley took her team to number 1 in the country, former champion as a player and coach, Charlton. And this was a matchup that the country wanted to see. Yeah. But it's not going to happen.
Yeah. What's more important, health or money? I think it's starting to be health, even though they're all pretty important. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the number 1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. The apps that I really love are by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Really appreciate that. Also launching a real estate TV listing show already underway in some markets in the spring of 2020. The goal, 100 real estate brokers list your properties on TV. McDonald's does it. Car dealerships do it. And sports companies do it when they're actually playing games. You can do your real estate properties also when you join the Big C team. Big C, I know that Steve Mnuchin, the 77th United States Secretary of the Treasury and the federal government, they proposed that $1 trillion stimulus package with the first wave of $250 billion to help Americans, supposed to be rolling out within the next 2 weeks. I hope that really happens, because that's real talk. And again, history will judge people. I know that, at least I want to say I'm doing the best I can to keep myself abreast of anything. I don't just want to be a rambling knucklehead talking about sports or whatever else we come up with. But I really love being able to talk to old people, and they say, hey, man, I talked to an old friend of mine. He's a military guy today. He said, I really like what you guys are doing. You know, he has a relative that's part of Tuskegee Institute and also Negro baseball leagues. His name is Clyde, and he says, I love how you guys do your show. You're not just talking about who won a game. That's important. Are we going to get that $1 trillion rolled out, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, you have to be salient about that. What did the president do when he said he needed the funds for a wall down on the southern border?
Yeah.
He signed an executive order, made it an act of an emergency on the United States. He said it was a federal emergency. That's all he did.
Yeah.
And he signed it, made it an executive order. And yet what we have right now with this pandemic is not an emergency on the American people, Charlton. All he has to do, forget about Congress. Mitch McConnell is not willing to just go out and say it's about the American public. If the president was who he's supposed to be, Charlton, then he would just make this an executive order. Don't worry about the House. Don't worry about the Senate.
Yeah.
Sign an executive order. This is what the American people need.
Yeah.
This is not a debate on the congressional floor, Charlton, of the Senate saying, well, we don't like the way that the bill is written. We want to make sure that the corporations get more money than what the private people do, Charlton. I don't know why people don't understand. If private citizens have money, they spend it. They're not going to hoard it. They're not going to go put it in a coffee can.
Yep.
They're going to spend it. If private businesses have money, Charlton, they're not going to pay people if they can't open their doors.
That's right.
Who are they going to pay? They're just going to. It's the same thing. So put the money directly in the consumer's hands. Let the consumer spend it. They're all adults if they have jobs.
Yeah, that's great. Sam Jackson asked us. He already told POTUS what to do. What's in your wallet? Sign the bill. Big C. Back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, With all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, tomorrow afternoon, Tom Brady becomes an unrestricted free agent, and everyone has said he's either going to the L.A. Chargers or to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. My money is on Tom Brady going to the number one media market in America because he has his own brand, and that is the New York Giants, because they are sitting there with a second-year quarterback under a rookie contract, and they can afford to pay Tom Brady. And Josh Johnson was Tom Brady's receivers coach in New England for the past couple of years, and he's now the Giants' new head coach.
Well, that's all fair and love and war. Sign the $1 trillion stimulus bill. Do it, Steve Mnuchin. Every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide. Follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the number one network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number one sports show in the universe. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up your phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.